She doesn't get addicted to men who love her. She gets addicted to the ones she can't figure out. You've been told that love is about connection, honesty, and emotional openness. But that's not what drives her obsession. It's not love that makes her stay awake at night, scrolling through old messages, wondering what went wrong. It's confusion. It's the tension between what she feels and what she can't understand. Because confusion, to the female mind, feels like chemistry. Uncertainty feels like depth. And silence feels like power. The truth is simple. She doesn't chase what she understands. She chases what keeps her wondering. Every unanswered question becomes a pulse in her mind. Every unread signal, a spark in her nervous system. You think she's addicted to you, but what she's really addicted to is the emotional maze you create without even trying. The modern man has been tricked. He believes that explaining, reassuring, confessing, and talking too much make a woman feel secure. He thinks that clarity wins her heart. But in truth, clarity kills her curiosity. And when curiosity dies, so does her emotional investment, because her brain isn't wired for peace. It's wired for pursuit. It's wired for dopamine, the chemical of anticipation, not satisfaction. She doesn't want to arrive. She wants to keep guessing where you stand. Every moment of uncertainty, every time you pull back, every pause before you reply, every quiet moment when she can't read your mind, triggers that cycle again. Dopamine spikes, desire ignites, and she mistakes the craving for love. That's why so many men lose power the moment they start giving more. The moment you become predictable, you stop being magnetic. The moment she fully understands you, the illusion of depth collapses. Because the mystery was never about who you are. It was about how she feels when she can't define you. So ask yourself, why does confusion feel like chemistry to her? Why does uncertainty make her crave you more? Why does silence, your silence, echo louder in her mind than any words you could ever say? It's because the female mind links uncertainty with importance. The harder you are to decode, the more meaningful she assumes you must be. Her subconscious links unpredictability with emotional value. Because the unknown demands attention, she becomes super-focused, scanning every tiny signal, every tone, every gesture. And the more attention she gives, the more invested she becomes. That's the mechanism of emotional addiction. She's not addicted to your love. She's addicted to her own reactions to you. You are the mirror through which she experiences herself, her hopes, her insecurities, her fantasies, her fears. And the moment you remove uncertainty, you remove the mirror. She stops seeing herself in you. She stops feeling. But the man who understands this law, the law of controlled confusion, doesn't need to manipulate. He doesn't play games. He simply has stillness, restraint, and unpredictability. He becomes the blank canvas where her imagination paints its wildest emotions. She feels alive in his presence, not because he performs, but because he doesn't need to. This video isn't about tricks. It's not about pretending to be mysterious. It's about understanding the biochemical and psychological loop that governs attraction. The same loop that turns emotional tension into obsession. Because at the core of every addictive relationship, there's one invisible variable, uncertainty. When she knows you'll text back, she relaxes. When she doesn't know, her mind starts to spiral. That spiral is dopamine. It's not love. It's the craving for resolution that never comes. And this is why women often chase men who confuse them. Not because those men are better, smarter, or more loving, but because those men activate the oldest instinct in her nervous system, the need to solve the unsolved, to make sense of the emotional puzzle, to decode the silence that stirs her. In the age of oversharing, where everyone explains, clarifies, and exposes every feeling online, the rarest power left is being mysterious. It's not about being cold. It's about being unreadable. Because the unreadable man becomes the emotional gravity around which her thoughts orbit. You see, when a woman meets a man who doesn't rush to be understood, her mind fills the gaps. And what she fills them with is not logic. It's fantasy. She begins to project meaning onto your stillness, depth onto your silence, and passion onto your composure. You become the model of mystery in her mind, the question she can't stop trying to answer. And that's when addiction begins. Not in the chaos you cause, but in the calm you maintain. Not in the drama you create, but in the quiet that leaves her mind unsettled. So understand this. The man she can't figure out becomes the man she can't forget. Because her brain keeps the loop alive, replaying every detail, searching for missing meaning, craving closure that never arrives. And every loop strengthens the emotional bond even in your absence. That's the hidden law of emotional gravity. You don't pull her closer, her own mind does. This video will reveal that law in its rawest form. You'll see why uncertainty, not affection, builds addiction. You'll understand how mystery becomes magnetic and why silence, when mastered, becomes dominance. And in the final part, you'll know how to have that calm chaos to become the man who confuses her without saying a word. This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about reclaiming polarity. It's about rediscovering what modern men have forgotten. That control isn't in words. It's in presence. And presence isn't loud. It's silent. Unshakable. Unpredictable. Because the truth is, women don't fall in love with certainty. They fall into obsession with mystery. They don't chase comfort. They chase tension, the emotional difference that makes them feel alive. You've spent years believing that love is clarity. That explaining yourself earns trust. That emotional openness guarantees connection. But the more you explain, the less she feels. The less she understands, the more she feels alive. So stop chasing understanding. Stop feeding her answers. Because the moment she fully knows you, she stops needing you. Let her wonder. Let her imagination do the chasing. This is where the addiction begins. Not in what you give her, but in what you hold back. Not in what you show, but in what you make her feel in your absence. Because when you become the man she can't define, you become the man she can't escape. And that's the truth she was never meant to hear. Part 1: The Paradox of Confusion. Why uncertainty triggers her addiction. The more you explain, the less she feels. The less she understands, the more she feels alive. That's the opposite of attraction. You've been told that women fall in love with clarity, communication, emotional openness. But the truth is colder and far more complex. Her addiction doesn't come from what she knows about you. It comes from what she can't know. Every man who's ever loved deeply has tried to make her feel safe through explanation. He clarifies. He reassures. He confesses. He believes that love is a trait of truth. That if he opens his soul, she will open hers. But what happens instead? The more he explains, the faster her fascination fades. The more transparent he becomes, the less she feels. Because emotion doesn't feed on certainty. It feeds on the unknown. Confusion, that flicker between desire and doubt, is the spark that keeps dopamine alive. It's the tension between what she sees and what she feels, between what she hopes and what she fears. And when her mind can't align those opposites, her nervous system lights up like a storm. You see, addiction doesn't start with pleasure. It starts with anticipation. And anticipation is born from unpredictability. When she doesn't know what's coming next, when she can't predict how you'll respond, how you'll move, how you'll feel, her brain releases dopamine, the same chemical that drives gamblers, addicts, and dreamers. Dopamine isn't the feeling of satisfaction. It's the hunger for it. And that hunger becomes her attachment to you. She tells herself she wants love. But her body tells another story. Her body craves the high that comes when you are almost close but not fully. When you're almost available but not predictable. It's the same pattern seen in every emotional addiction, a loop of reward and pulling away, attention and absence, warmth and silence. That's why she remembers men who confuse her long after she forgets men who loved her. The men who gave her stability became invisible. The men who left her guessing became unforgettable. Because the human brain doesn't bond to peace. It bonds to tension. It bonds to whatever keeps it searching for meaning. And her mind, when left without answers, starts to create its own. That's the hidden mechanism. The female brain is addicted to meaning-making. When she doesn't have the full story, she writes one. She builds it from fragments. Your pauses, your tone, your silence, your unpredictability. She connects dots that don't exist. Turns your absence into mystery and your distance into depth. She's not addicted to you. She's addicted to the version of you her imagination creates. In that sense, confusion becomes her creative fuel. It makes her feel like she's part of something deep, something she can't yet name. She interprets her own emotional ups and downs as proof of love. But what she's really experiencing is the chemical rush of uncertainty. Her mind is hungry for closure, but her body doesn't want to find it because closure kills the chase. Closure kills the high. The irony is brutal. The more you try to ease her mind, the more you starve her desire. Every explanation lowers the tension. Every confession ends the guessing. Every reassurance softens the craving. When you say, "Here's what I mean," dopamine drops. When you stay silent, it rises. When she can't read you, she reads into you. And that's where the addiction grows. You think love is about being understood. But for her, fascination is about not understanding. It's about the chase to decode what cannot be decoded. That's why she replays your messages, your glances, your pauses. She's looking for meaning, but meaning doesn't exist, only perception does. And in her search for you, she falls deeper into herself. You are the stimulus, but the addiction is self-created. She's addicted to her own interpretations, her own emotional loops, her own projections. Every man she's ever obsessed over wasn't a master manipulator. He was simply unreadable enough to let her imagination do the work. And when imagination takes over, logic disappears. She'll rationalize contradictions, ignore red flags, romanticize distance because her emotional system confuses uncertainty with depth. It tells her, if I feel this much, it must be love. But feeling isn't love. It's chemistry triggered by what she cannot define. This is the opposite. She says she wants truth, but she's drawn to mystery. She says she wants safety, but she craves danger. She says she wants stability, but she stays attached to chaos. As long as that chaos comes wrapped in calm. The men she calls toxic are often just the men she couldn't decode. The men she calls boring are those who gave her peace too soon. And the man she can't forget, the one she compares everyone else to, is the man who made her mind spiral in quiet confusion. It's not because he was perfect. It's because he was a puzzle. And the brain never forgets the puzzle it couldn't solve. So what do you do with this knowledge? You stop explaining too much. You stop clarifying every silence. You stop trying to make her understand your heart. Because the more you try to define yourself, the smaller your emotional gravity becomes. Instead, you let silence do what words never can. You let space breathe between moments. You let unpredictability shape perception. When you don't rush to explain, her mind rewrites you into something larger than life. She begins to believe there's a reason behind your stillness. Even when there isn't, she starts to feel there's meaning in your restraint. Even when it's simply control, that's how silence rewires emotion. It doesn't just hold back. It transforms. It turns uncertainty into fascination. It turns your absence into her obsession. Because when you stop reacting, she starts imagining. And her imagination is far more powerful than anything you could say. Every time you pause, her brain fills the gap with story. Every time you pull away, she fills the void with longing. Every time you hold back, she invests more until she's no longer chasing you. She's chasing the feelings you awaken within her. That's how the opposite works. Addiction isn't born from having plenty, but from lack. It's not the man who gives her everything who becomes unforgettable. It's the one who gives her almost everything, then disappears into silence. She thinks she wants to understand you, but what she truly wants is to feel you. And feelings only live in uncertainty. The moment you define yourself, you end the mystery. And when mystery dies, desire follows. So remember this, her confusion isn't your failure, it's your power. You don't need to manipulate, pretend, or play games. You only need to be grounded enough not to explain your silence, because the man who can stay still while she spins becomes her emotional center of gravity. Don't explain. Watch how silence rewrites her emotions. Because once confusion takes root, mystery becomes gravity. Part 2, The Magnetic Mind. How mystery becomes emotional gravity. Mystery isn't about hiding. It's about letting her imagination do the chasing. The world taught men to reveal, to explain, to perform, to prove they're honest, open, emotionally available. But here's the cruel opposite. The more she understands you, the less she feels you. Because when she can name you, she stops needing to feel you. Mystery isn't about holding back facts. It's about becoming a mirror. One that reflects what she wants to see, yet never fully reveals what's behind it. You don't become magnetic by saying more. You become magnetic by leaving space. Space for her mind to wander. Space for her imagination to build you into something larger than life. Because the female mind doesn't fall in love with a man. It falls in love with the meaning she assigns to him. And meaning is born in uncertainty. Every woman carries two voices within her. Logic and emotion. Logic wants safety. Emotion wants tension. Logic wants to understand. Emotion wants to feel. And when these two voices clash, when she can't align what she knows with what she feels, the brain enters a psychological tension called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the invisible force behind every emotional addiction. It's what keeps her awake at night thinking of a man she knows isn't good for her. It's what makes her chase clarity from someone who only gives her fragments. Because her mind hates inconsistency, it needs to make sense of the story. And when the story doesn't make sense, she invests more energy trying to complete it. That investment, that obsessive need to resolve the conflict between her logic and her emotions becomes attachment. You don't have to manipulate her to create this tension. You only have to remain hard to grasp. When you stay still in your energy, when you don't explain too much, when you remain unpredictable yet calm, she begins to feel a split inside herself. One part says, I shouldn't care this much. The other says, I can't stop thinking about him. That contradiction becomes gravity. It keeps her orbiting around you, even when she tries to walk away. And here's the truth most men never realize. A woman doesn't fall in love through logic. She falls through dissonance. She falls when her emotions argue with her mind. When she says, he confuses me, what she really means is, he makes me feel alive. Because the mystery of not knowing fuels the illusion of depth. If she can't define you, her imagination expands to fill the gaps. And what fills those gaps isn't reality. It's fantasy. Her fantasy version of you is far more powerful than the real one. She imagines layers behind your silence, meaning behind your restraint, purpose behind your unpredictability. You become an idea, not a person. And ideas can't be forgotten. Ideas haunt. Every silence you hold becomes a page she writes on. Every moment you don't respond becomes a scene she replays. She wonders, what does he mean by that pause? Why did he look at me that way? Why does his calm make me feel like chaos? And in searching for those answers, she feeds the loop herself. You don't chase her. Her own mind does it for you. That's the magnetic mind. You are not pulling her with force. You're letting gravity form through her imagination, because imagination is the most powerful drug in human psychology. It creates what doesn't exist. It paints desire where there's only silence. It makes her crave you not because of what you do, but because of what she believes you mean. And the irony is that you don't need to act mysterious. You only need to stop performing, because performance is control. And control reveals fear. When you perform, you show need. When you explain, you expose insecurity. When you share too much, you destroy the contrast that keeps her intrigued. The magnetic man doesn't hide. He simply doesn't reveal too soon. He's not defensive, but detached. He doesn't chase validation. He becomes validation. Because he's not addicted to being seen. He's comfortable being felt. In that stillness, she projects meaning onto you. Her body reacts to you before her logic catches up. She feels the calm in your presence as a kind of power, a grounded dominance that her subconscious reads as safety and danger at once. That duality creates polarity. And polarity is the current that drives attraction. When you stop performing, she starts performing for you. She begins to text first. She starts things. She tries to impress because her mind can't stand the gap between what she feels and what she can explain. So, she moves toward you, hoping to resolve the dissonance, but she never does because the mystery keeps shifting just out of reach. That's the art of emotional gravity. It's not manipulation, it's mastery. It's understanding that energy moves where attention goes. And the more she gives her attention to decoding you, the deeper she falls into her own emotional web. She's not drawn to you by logic. She's pulled by the force of her own unanswered questions. Think of the moon and the tide. The moon doesn't chase the ocean. It doesn't demand, explain, or negotiate. It simply is silent, distant, inevitable. And yet, the ocean rises and falls with its pull. That's emotional gravity. The less you move, the more she does. The less you explain, the more she imagines. The less you try to prove, the more she feels compelled to understand. Every woman has felt this, that strange ache for a man she can't fully read. She tries to define him, but the definition keeps changing. She feels safe and unsafe at the same time. Calm yet restless, drawn yet afraid. That tension is her addiction. She's not chasing the man. She's chasing the balance she lost when she met him. So stop performing. Stop filling the silence with explanations, with constant validation, with words that water down your mystery. Let her imagination work. Let her dissonance do the chasing. Because here's the secret most never learn. Once you stop trying to make her understand you, she starts trying to understand herself through you. Your stillness becomes her mirror. She sees her desires reflected in your calm, her fears exposed by your silence, her fantasies projected onto your restraint. She becomes addicted not to your presence, but to the person she becomes in your presence. That's why your mystery feels like gravity. It doesn't pull her body, it pulls her mind. It makes her orbit around you, seeking closure that doesn't exist, meaning that can't be found. And the deeper she searches, the deeper she binds herself to you. You're not confusing her. You're awakening her. You're not hiding. You're allowing her to explore the parts of herself that only uncertainty can reveal. Because within that uncertainty lies her deepest emotional truth. She needs to feel out of control to believe it's real. So stop performing. Start being unreadable. Not because being unreadable is power, but because it's purity. When you no longer shape yourself to be understood, you become something she can't categorize. And what can't be categorized becomes unforgettable. Because the real power isn't in what you show, it's in what she can't decode. Part 3, The Power of Unreadable Emotion. Control without saying a word. When you stop reacting, she starts imagining. That's the law of emotional gravity. Silence doesn't mean absence. Silence, when mastered, becomes presence. And presence when unreadable becomes control. You've been taught to believe that emotional honesty means constant expression. That the more openly you show your feelings, the more genuine you seem. But there's a deeper truth most men never understand. The moment she can read your emotions, she begins to predict you. And the moment she predicts you, she stops feeling you. Because emotion at its core is not communication. It's tension. It's the electricity that lives in the space between what is shown and what is hidden. When that space collapses, when everything is exposed, the voltage dies. And without that voltage, attraction fades into comfort and comfort into indifference. To be unreadable is not to be cold. It's to be intentional. It's to move through silence with purpose. To allow her mind to search for meaning even when no words are given. Every glance, every pause, every breath you choose not to waste on explanation becomes an invitation for her imagination to do the work. When you stop reacting, she starts imagining. She begins to wonder what you feel, what you think, what you hide. Her brain, unable to tolerate uncertainty, begins filling in the blanks with fantasy. And that fantasy becomes emotion. That's how control is created without control. You stop feeding her certainty and she starts feeding herself with desire because the female mind doesn't crave truth. It craves meaning. And when meaning is absent, she invents it. When she can't decode your silence, she decorates it with her own projections, her own longing, her own insecurities, her own hope. You become a mirror where she sees herself, not you. And that's the secret. The man she loves most is not the one she knows, but the one she creates in her mind. Every man she's ever obsessed over had this one trait. Being unreadable. He didn't speak often. He didn't explain himself. He wasn't reactive. He didn't chase. He didn't beg to be understood. And because he didn't give her the emotional data she wanted, her brain went to work. It tried to solve him. And in trying to solve him, she became tangled. That's the opposite of emotional power. The less you give, the more she invests. The less you reveal, the more she imagines. The less you react, the more she feels. Because when you don't reveal your emotion, she feels its weight. When you don't respond, she feels the silence louder than words. When you don't explain, she senses meaning where there is none. And that sense becomes her addiction, her need to keep decoding you, to keep searching for the hidden message that never comes. Unreadable emotion doesn't mean not caring. It's not indifference. It's self-mastery. It's knowing that emotion is energy. And if you release it carelessly, it loses its force. But when you contain it, when you channel it into stillness, that energy radiates. You don't need to say what you feel. She feels what you don't say. There's power in being unpredictable. Not through chaos, but through composure. Because true composure is not emptiness. It's depth disguised as calm. It's the ability to hold your emotions like a still ocean, quiet on the surface, infinite beneath. She looks into that stillness and feels pulled into it. The way gravity pulls planets into orbit. She doesn't know why. She just knows she can't look away. And here lies the essence of control without speaking. You become the emotional center of the interaction. While others spill their energy outward, trying to be understood, you draw energy inward, making her invest hers. Your silence becomes the question her mind keeps asking. Your restraint becomes the tension her heart can't resolve. You are not detached. You are deliberate. You're not playing games. You're mastering energy. Every time she expects a reaction and you don't give it, her brain fires the circuits of reward anticipation. Dopamine surges. And that surge, that biological storm of expectation without fulfillment, becomes the seed of obsession because she doesn't crave your approval. She craves your reaction. And when you don't give it, she begins to chase it. Not because she wants you, but because her body has mistaken uncertainty for excitement. That's how attraction becomes addiction. When her nervous system can't tell the difference between tension and desire. Unreadable men create that tension without effort. They don't deny emotion. They contain it. They know that silence is not a lack of communication. It's the highest form of it. It's not emptiness. It's a mirror. When she looks into it, she sees herself reflected, magnified, exposed. She begins to feel emotions she thought were yours, but they're hers all along. You don't need to say, "I'm different." She'll feel it in the pauses. She'll feel it in the calm that doesn't seek validation. She'll feel it in the steady tone that doesn't rise or fall depending on her reaction. Because emotional unreadability signals one thing to the female subconscious. Dominance. Not aggression, not arrogance, but control. And control to her equals safety wrapped in danger. She feels both secure and challenged in your silence. She doesn't know where she stands. And that uncertainty keeps her mind alive. You become the storm she can't predict, and the calm she can't resist. That's why unreadable emotion creates emotional gravity. It pulls her closer without words. It binds her to the story she's writing in her head. And every time she tries to leave, the lack of closure pulls her back because you're not a man anymore. You're a myth. And myths don't die. They linger in the corners of thought. Half real, half imagined, too powerful to forget. Don't rush to clarify. Clarity is the death of imagination. When you explain, you reduce yourself to facts. When you remain still, you become mystery. And mystery is the oxygen of female emotion. She doesn't breathe through understanding. She breathes through curiosity. Let her confusion build the myth. Because what she can't define, she can't destroy. The more she tries to read you, the deeper she falls into the story of you. She becomes both author and victim of her own emotional novel. Rewriting each silence as a secret message, each distance as a hidden depth. And while she thinks she's decoding you, she's only revealing herself. That's the highest form of control. Not the domination of her body or her choices, but the quiet command of her imagination. To make her feel without touching, to make her remember without reminding, to make her addicted without effort. Unreadable emotion is not manipulation. It's mastery of self, of energy, of silence. It's knowing that stillness is louder than speech. And that what you don't reveal becomes infinitely more powerful than what you do. It's the difference between noise and resonance. Noise fills the air. Resonance fills the mind. When you master unreadable emotion, you become resonance. You linger. You echo. You pull without reaching. You affect without speaking. But remember, every power has a limit. When being unreadable turns into cruelty, when silence turns into not caring, the connection collapses. Confusion can become destruction. The same silence that makes her crave you can, if misused, make her fear you. And fear doesn't create addiction. It creates avoidance. The line is razor thin. Unreadable is not unfeeling. Detachment is not dislike. True mastery isn't about making her suffer. It's about making her feel deeply without losing her sense of self. Because power without empathy corrodes from the inside. So hold your silence like a sword. Sharp but controlled. Use it not to wound but to awaken. Because when you learn to control emotion without words, you no longer chase attention. You become it. And that's when your silence turns from emptiness into presence. And your presence turns into gravity. But every power has a limit, and confusion when left unbalanced can turn into destruction. Part 4. The thin line between confusion and manipulation. Confusion without empathy becomes cruelty. That's the truth most men never face. Because in the pursuit of power, they forget responsibility. In the search for control, they lose compassion. They turn mystery into a weapon, not a mirror. And when that happens, attraction decays into fear. There's a line, invisible but absolute, between being unreadable and being deceptive. Between creating tension and creating chaos, between being the calm that she craves and the storm that destroys her trust. Cross that line and what once drew her in begins to push her away. True mystery doesn't manipulate, it magnifies. It amplifies the polarity between masculine stillness and feminine motion, between your grounded silence and her restless curiosity. When you have mystery with empathy, she doesn't feel lost. She feels alive. But when you use confusion as control, she doesn't feel drawn. She feels unsafe. And a woman can only fall into obsession when she feels safe in her uncertainty. She must feel the ground beneath the fog. She must sense that even when she can't read you, she's not in danger. Because the addiction never comes from fear. It comes from fascination. To understand this, you have to grasp the difference between energy and strategy. The weak man uses tactics. He holds back affection, fakes disinterest, disappears to gain control. That's not mystery. That's manipulation. It's performance dressed as power. It's fear of losing disguised as dominance. The strong man, however, doesn't play games. He simply has calm, unpredictability. He understands the dance of masculine and feminine energy. How polarity feeds the current of attraction. He doesn't need to deceive her mind. He only needs to remain centered in his presence. He doesn't act mysterious. He is mysterious because he is whole within himself. When she feels that kind of stillness, she relaxes into her confusion instead of running from it. She feels the tension between wanting to understand and wanting to surrender. And that tension, that opposite, is where emotional addiction begins. But the moment that tension becomes pain, the spell breaks. When she feels uncertainty and fear, she retreats. Because the female mind, though drawn to chaos, is wired for survival. She will always seek safety beneath the storm. And if your energy feels unstable, deceptive, or punishing, she won't stay. She'll protect herself. You don't want to be the man she fears. You want to be the man she can't decode yet still trusts. You want her to feel uncertain, but never unsafe. That's the razor-thin line that separates mastery from manipulation. Because when you manipulate, you drain both of you. You create connection through control, not polarity. And control is the lowest form of power. It's temporary, insecure, and exhausting. True power doesn't demand submission. It invites surrender. It doesn't need tricks. It simply is. Confusion used without empathy is emotional violence. It creates dependency, not desire. It traps her mind in fear instead of fascination. And fear never turns into love, only into numbness. But when confusion is balanced with presence, it awakens something ancient in her. Her instinct to seek, her longing to feel, her desire to merge. You're not making her lose herself. You're making her find herself through you. That's the difference. She's not addicted to you. She's addicted to what she becomes around you. The aliveness that only mystery can awaken. She doesn't want to be manipulated. She wants to be moved. Moved by something she can't explain. Something that feels deeper than logic, stronger than words. And that feeling can only exist when she senses your integrity beneath your silence. When she knows that your restraint isn't punishment, it's peace. That your unpredictability isn't chaos, it's composure. That your distance isn't rejection, it's strength. The line between confusion and cruelty is drawn by your intention. If you confuse her to gain control, you corrupt the dynamic. If you confuse her because you refuse to shrink into predictability, you elevate it. One creates damage, the other creates devotion. A man who plays games with emotion eventually drowns in them because manipulation is a loop. It feeds on reaction. You control her until she reacts. Then you chase that reaction because it validates your power. But that power is hollow. You become dependent on her confusion to feel significant. And that's not mastery. That's addiction. You are no longer leading energy. You are feeding off it. You become the very thing you tried to control. Reactive, anxious, desperate. That's the opposite of the manipulator. He thinks he's in control, but he's the one enslaved. The man of presence, however, doesn't need the loop. He doesn't rely on her confusion. He lets her orbit him naturally because he stands still. His silence doesn't provoke, it invites. His mystery doesn't wound, it awakens. His unpredictability doesn't punish, it pulls. When she feels uncertain but safe, her heart opens wider. When she feels uncertain and afraid, it closes instantly. That's why empathy is the spine of power. Without empathy, stillness becomes stone. Without empathy, mystery becomes manipulation. Without empathy, power collapses into cruelty. Every man must decide which type of energy he carries. Do you make her lose direction or do you make her want to find it? Do you turn her uncertainty into panic or into fascination? Do you dominate her emotions or become the mirror where she discovers her own? True masculine energy doesn't need to dominate. It simply defines space. It holds chaos without reacting to it. It guides without forcing. And that guidance, that calm in the middle of her storm is what keeps her coming back. Because confusion when combined with empathy becomes enchantment. It becomes a safe mystery, a space where her emotions can move freely without fear of collapse. She doesn't feel manipulated. She feels seen even when she can't explain why. That's the energy of emotional mastery. Still, grounded, magnetic. Don't fake mystery. Don't perform calmness because she can sense pretense before you speak. You can't pretend to be unreadable. You either are or you're not. You can't fake composure. Your energy betrays your intent. Real mystery is a side effect of alignment. When you are whole within yourself, you become unpredictable naturally because you're not performing for approval. Your unpredictability doesn't come from chaos. It comes from freedom. You don't need to prove your value. You have it. And that's the energy that fascinates her. She doesn't know what you'll do next. Not because you're inconsistent, but because you're alive. You move with your own rhythm, not hers. You respond from awareness, not emotion. That's why she can't map you. That's why she can't replace you. So remember this truth. Confusion is a flame. Empathy is the oxygen that keeps it alive. Too much confusion and the fire burns out of control. Too little and it dies of certainty. But with empathy, the flame dances endlessly, unpredictable, captivating, alive. When you have calm unpredictability, you no longer chase power. You are power. Because your mystery doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from mastery. And mastery is the only form of power that doesn't destroy what it touches. And when you master that balance, you become the mystery she can't escape. Part 5, Becoming the Mystery She Can't Escape. The calmest man creates the deepest chaos inside her. That is the opposite of emotional power. Because it's not the loudest man who consumes her thoughts. It's the quiet one. The one who doesn't fight for attention yet owns the room. The one who doesn't speak often yet every silence feels deliberate. He doesn't chase her. He lets her orbit around the gravity of his stillness. You see, the true addiction doesn't come from chaos. It comes from calm confusion, the kind that disarms her logic and awakens her instinct. When a man carries stillness that cannot be shaken, he becomes an emotional mirror. She looks at him, but what she sees is herself, magnified, distorted, raw. She projects every desire, every fear, every fantasy onto the emptiness he holds. And that projection becomes her prison. You don't make her addicted by giving her intensity. You make her addicted by giving her space to lose herself. Because the female mind doesn't crave answers. It craves experience. It wants to feel something that defies words. Something that can't be measured, can't be named. And when your energy becomes that silent depth, she falls. Not into you, but into the feeling you awaken within her. Every woman has met that man once in her life. The man she can't explain. The man she can't categorize. The man whose silence felt like gravity, whose absence felt louder than presence. He wasn't necessarily better. He was simply unresolved. And the human mind cannot move on from what it cannot resolve. The more she tries to decode you, the deeper she falls because the act of decoding is the addiction. Her mind keeps chasing closure, but closure never comes. Every time she thinks she understands you, something in your energy contradicts it. Not because you're playing games, but because you're real. Because you're not a character she can finish reading. You're a present she can only feel. That's the secret most men never learn. You don't need to impress her. You don't need to perform. You don't need to prove anything. You simply need to exist in such alignment that your calmness becomes a puzzle. Because when your calm carries depth, her chaos finds reflection. When your silence carries weight, her noise starts to quiet. When your energy stands still, she starts to move around it. She becomes restless in your stillness, drawn to what she can't define, addicted to the emotional uncertainty that feels strangely safe. Because it's not emptiness she feels from you. It's containment. It's the rare masculine presence that doesn't collapse under pressure, that doesn't beg to be understood, that doesn't chase validation. You become the axis around which her emotions spin. Not because you control her, but because you don't react. Your stillness becomes the contrast that defines her motion. She feels seen without being decoded. She feels held without being touched. She feels possessed without being owned. That's why she stays. Not because you capture her, but because she can't escape herself when she's near you. You don't cage her. You contain her energy. You become the invisible boundary where her chaos finds its reflection. And that reflection, that sacred friction, is where her addiction begins. She can't tell if you're her peace or her undoing. She can't tell if she wants to run from you or into you. That uncertainty keeps her heart suspended between fear and desire. And that's the emotional limbo she calls love. When she's with you, she feels everything. When you're gone, she feels nothing. So, she keeps returning. Not because you demand her, but because she needs the high of your energy to remember she's alive. That's the law of emotional gravity. The more grounded you are, the more she spins. The more still you become, the more motion she creates. You are the silent center of the storm. Calm, controlled, untouchable. And that calm drives her crazy in the most beautiful way. She'll try to provoke you. She'll try to test your limits to see if she can make you react. Not because she wants chaos, but because she wants confirmation that she matters to you. But your power lies not in reacting. It lies in staying anchored. Every time you hold your center, she feels the pulse of her own chaos louder. Every time you don't explain, she builds her own story about why. And that story keeps her tied to you. Be the calm she can't escape, not the storm she runs from. Because chaos burns bright, but it burns out fast. Calm burns slow and it lasts forever. The quiet man doesn't seek to dominate. He seeks to be. His presence alone rearranges the emotional landscape of the woman before him because she senses something ancient, something immovable. A man who isn't desperate to prove his worth. A man who doesn't seek validation through attention. A man whose silence speaks the language of certainty. That's what creates obsession. Not what you do, but what you don't need to do. When you stop chasing, you shift the polarity. You become the one who defines the rhythm. You move slow, deliberate, unbothered. You become time itself, and she starts to revolve around you. Because mystery isn't about hiding. It's about existing beyond interpretation. When you stop trying to make her understand you, she starts trying to understand herself through you. Your stillness becomes a doorway into her own depths. She feels seen, not because you expose her, but because you reflect her. You become her mirror and her maze at the same time. She'll say you make her feel crazy. What she means is you make her feel alive. You awaken parts of her that she's buried beneath years of control, noise, and logic. You remind her of the part of herself that longs to surrender, not to a man, but to the feeling of being undone. That's why she can't escape you, because she's not running from you. She's running from the version of herself that only exists around you. You are both her anchor and her abyss, her safety and her uncertainty. And that duality is the most powerful bond known to the human heart. Don't try to be mysterious. Don't act unreadable. You don't have to. Mystery isn't something you perform. It's something you become when you master stillness. When you stop living to be understood. When you stop performing for love. When your worth becomes independent of her reaction, then your silence transforms into presence. Your presence transforms into gravity. And your gravity transforms into legend. Every myth that has survived time was born from the same essence. Mystery. The hero we never fully understand. The story we can never quite explain. The feeling we can't forget. That's who you must become, the myth that lives between her logic and her longing. Because in a world full of noise, the man who carries silence becomes unforgettable. In a culture of oversharing, restraint becomes magnetic. In a generation obsessed with exposure, privacy becomes power. You are that power when your calm shakes her more than chaos ever could. When your stillness pulls her closer than passion ever did, when your presence becomes both the question and the answer she can't stop searching for. That's when you stop being a man and start becoming a force. You stop existing in her memory. You start existing in her bloodstream. Every song, every silence, every sleepless night becomes a reminder of you. Not because you said something deep, but because you said nothing at all. Be the calm she can't escape, not the storm she runs from. Because storms impress, but calm possesses. And when she's finally still enough to feel it, she'll realize she was never addicted to you. She was addicted to who she became in your quiet gravity. And that's where the addiction begins. Not in chaos, but in calm confusion. She didn't fall for you because you confused her. She fell because your stillness made her lose control. That's the truth beneath everything you've just heard. She was never drawn to your chaos. She was drawn to your calm. The kind of calm that could hold her chaos without being moved by it. She didn't crave your words. She craved your silence. The silence that made her question herself, that made her feel alive again. That made her remember what it felt like to want. You see, she never truly loved you. She loved the emotion you awakened in her. She loved the reflection of herself that came alive when you were near. Because for a woman, love isn't logic. It's sensation. It's a chemical storm inside her brain, a cycle of dopamine, anticipation, fear, and relief. It's the feeling of chasing something she can't fully reach. That's why she didn't fall for clarity. She fell for contradiction. She didn't fall for explanation. She fell for depth. She didn't fall for your words. She fell for your energy. The quiet certainty that didn't demand, didn't chase, didn't collapse. Every time you didn't explain yourself, she searched deeper. Every time you didn't react, she reacted more. Every time you stayed still, she spun faster. And that spinning, that tension became her emotional addiction. She doesn't miss your voice. She misses the silence that made her feel something she couldn't name. She doesn't miss your presence. She misses the way your absence forced her to face her own emotions. She doesn't miss the man. She misses control over her, but in control over yourself. Because mastery over her emotions begins with mastery over yours. She can't manipulate a man who doesn't react. She can't dominate a man who doesn't need to prove himself. She can't confuse a man who is comfortable being misunderstood. The moment you stop seeking to be understood, you become the man she can't stop thinking about. Because understanding kills fascination. Mystery keeps it alive. When you no longer need to be decoded, you become the riddle her mind can't abandon. And that's where the addiction truly begins. Not in chaos, but in calm confusion. She falls not because you make her uncertain, but because you hold her uncertainty with strength. You become the emotional anchor in her storm, the still point around which her chaos spins. Understand this. Every emotional game, every chase, every high she feels around you, all of it is built on one law. She doesn't get addicted to the man. She gets addicted to the emotion the man evokes. The moment you understand that, you hold the key to every dynamic. She doesn't crave your affection. She craves your affect. She doesn't long for your love. She longs for your energy. The way it unsettles her, awakens her, reminds her she's alive. Because love fades when it becomes safe. But emotional gravity, that unexplainable pull, endures. That's why some men are forgotten and others become legends. Some men speak, others resonate. Some men chase, others attract. The difference isn't in what they say, it's in what they hold back. Because mystery is not emptiness. It's power contained. It's energy unspoken. You don't need to be louder. You need to be stiller. You don't need to make her understand you. You need to make her feel you. Not through performance, but through presence. Not through intensity, but through control. You are not the storm she runs from. You are the calm she can't escape. You are not the chaos that consumes her. You are the silence that defines her. That's why she loses control around you. Because you've mastered the one art most men never will. The art of stillness. Stillness is not absence. It's concentration. It's power in pure form, energy so grounded that everything unstable moves around it. When you become still, you stop chasing gravity. You become it. And when you become gravity, she will always return. Even when she walks away, even when she forgets your voice, even when she tells herself she's done. Because gravity doesn't beg, it doesn't persuade, it doesn't move, it simply pulls. She will remember your calm more than any conversation. She will remember your silence more than any confession. She will remember how it felt to be near you. And she'll try to find that feeling in other men, other moments, other lives. But she won't. Because that kind of stillness can't be replicated. It can only be had. So understand this final truth. The greatest attraction is not created. It's revealed through mastery of self. When you stop performing, when you stop proving, when you stop chasing validation, you enter the realm of quiet dominance. You become the man she can't decode, the man she can't forget, the man she both fears and craves because she didn't fall for you because you confused her. She fell because your stillness made her lose control. And the deeper truth, she never wanted to escape. Because your calm didn't imprison her. It set her free from the noise of her own mind. When you understand this law, when you master your emotional presence, you no longer chase women, attention, or validation. You become the axis around which desire revolves. You become the quiet force every woman feels but can't explain. And if you want to understand the next law, the one that makes her fear losing you even more, watch the next video, The Hidden Trigger. Why she starts chasing when you go silent.